Coming up on Arirang News. South Korea is successfully winning gold medals at the 2024 Paris Olympics. The country won its fourth gold medal on Monday as Ban Hyo-jin secured the top place in the women's 10-meter air rifle just several hours ago. The latest update regarding North Korea says that the North Korean leader's daughter, Kim Jong-un, is being trained to succeed her father, while the regime leader's health seems to have deteriorated as he weighs about 140 kilograms with some weight-related diseases. South Korea's total population rebounded last year after 2 years of dropping on the back of a growing number of foreign residents. The decrease in the birth rate is resulting in the working-age population falling, while senior citizens aged 65 and above have reached over 9.6 million.
Welcome to the 9 p.m. edition of Arirang News. I'm Kim Bo-kyung. Team Korea is making victorious strides at the Games in Paris, adding 2 more golds today in women's archery and shooting. Our Lee Si-woo has the latest.
At the Olympic Games in Paris, South Korea's 16-year-old shooter Ban Hyo-jin won gold in the women's 10-meter air rifle on Monday, setting an Olympic record with a score of 251.8. This was South Korea's 100th gold overall in all the Summer Olympics it has competed in. Earlier Monday, Team Korea's archers Chun Eun-young, Nam Su-yeon, and Im Si-yeon won gold in the women's team event, capturing the country's 10th consecutive Olympic gold in the event. The 3 first-time Olympians won by a final point score of 5-4 over China. Archer Lim said after the win that she is very happy about keeping this place in Korean archery history. South Korea leads all countries in Olympic archery with 28 gold medals and 44 medals overall. Table tennis player Shin Yu-bin has advanced to the round of 32, beating Australia's Melissa Tapper 4-0 in the women's singles. During the first 3 days of the Games in Paris thus far, Team Korea has won a total of 4 golds in archery, fencing, and shooting. South Korea has also captured 2 silvers in shooting and 1 bronze in swimming. Lee Si-woo, Arirang News.
Shifting gears a bit, South Korea's intelligence agency says North Korea has begun training Kim Jong-un's young daughter as his likely successor. Kim Joo-hae, who was first unveiled to the outside world in November 2022, has been seen accompanying her father to major public events, including military parades and missile test launches. The National Intelligence Service said although Kim appears to be her father's likely heir, it did not rule out the possibility that another sibling could succeed the North Korean leader. Regarding Kim Jong-un's health, the spy agency said he weighs 140 kilograms and has had high blood pressure and diabetes since his early 30s. Defense ministers from Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo have set in stone a security framework on trilateral cooperation against regional risks to stability, including provocations by Pyongyang. Kim Jong-sil reports.
Defense Minister Shin Won-sik met with U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and Japanese Defense Minister Minoru Kihara in Tokyo on Sunday and signed a memorandum that institutionalizes trilateral security cooperation amid growing threats posed by North Korea.
We have signed the South Korea-US-Japan Security Cooperation Framework. This marks the first time in history that security cooperation between the 3 countries has been institutionalized.
The Memorandum of Cooperation on the Trilateral Security Cooperation Framework aims to formalize high-level defense talks, information sharing, and trilateral exercises to contribute to peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula and in the Indo-Pacific region. The multi-domain trilateral exercise, Freedom Edge, will likely take place more often. In the meeting, the three defense chiefs recalled their commitment to strengthening their cooperation to deter nuclear and missile threats posed by North Korea. They also expressed serious concerns about the regime's growing military cooperation with Russia.
In a situation where the rules-based international order is under threat, strengthening the security cooperation between South Korea, the US and Japan is not a choice but a necessity.
In a separate bilateral meeting with the U.S., both sides strongly urged North Korea to stop sending waste-carrying balloons toward the south and condemned military cooperation between Pyongyang and Moscow. In a meeting with the Japanese defense minister, they agreed to establish an annual plan for defense exchanges and restart joint search and rescue exercises. The three defense chiefs agreed to hold the next meeting in South Korea next year. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, over in the Middle East, Israel targeted Hezbollah militants in Lebanon this past weekend in retaliation of an assault on a football field in Golan Heights that killed a dozen Israeli youth. Lee Seung-jae has the details.
12 children and teens were killed when a rocket struck a football pitch in the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights on Saturday. While no one has claimed responsibility for the deadly attack, Israel was quick to blame the Lebanese militant group Hezbollah. The militant group said while it struck a military base in the region in retaliation for Israeli attacks in Lebanon, it was not behind the attack on the football pitch. Saturday's strike also marks the deadliest attack on an Israeli target since the start of the Israel-Hamas conflict in October. However, Israel was swift to respond, launching airstrikes against a number of Lebanese targets on Sunday. The Israel Defense Forces claimed it conducted airstrike against 7 Hezbollah targets deep inside Lebanese territory. No casualties have been reported yet. The United States was quick to condemn Hezbollah for the deadly football pitch attack. This includes U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, who is said to be closely monitoring the situation. However, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who supported Israel's rights to defend its people, also stressed that there shouldn't be an escalation of tensions.
We're in conversations with the government of Israel, and again, I emphasize its right to defend its citizens and our determination to make sure that they're able to do that. But we also don't want to see the conflict escalate. We don't want to see it spread. That has been one of our goals from day one, from October 7th on.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres also condemned Saturday's attack in Golan Heights, while expressing his deepest condolences to the families of those who lost their lives and wished speedy recoveries to all those injured. However, the UN chief also stressed that all parties must exercise maximum restraint and avoid any further escalations. Golan Heights is a historically contentious region in southwestern Syria that also overlooks Lebanon and borders Jordan. The region was part of Syria in 1967 before Israel captured most of the area during the Six-Day War. It later fully captured and annexed it by 1981. However, the annexation by Israel has not been recognized internationally as Syria continues to demand its return. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Venezuela's electoral authority announced Monday that President Nicolás Maduro had won a third term, despite his opponents claiming there were irregularities during the election process. The country's National Electoral Council said Maduro won 51% of the vote, overcoming the main opposition candidate, Edmundo González, who garnered 44%, explaining that the results were based on reports from 80% of the country's polling stations. But the opposition backing González said there were violations during the election and that the results contradicted several exit polls which showed a win for González. This is setting up a showdown between the opposition and the government. The NEC has yet to release the tallies from the nation's 30,000 polling booths. The country's population in 2023 turned around to report an increase. It was mainly due to an influx of foreign residents, while the number of local citizens continued to fall. Park Gun-woo has the latest figures.
The population in South Korea is up for the first time in 3 years due to a rise in the number of foreign residents. According to Statistics Korea's 2023 census released on Monday, the total population is around 51.7 million, up 0.2% from the previous year. The total population had been seeing on-year decreases since 2021. The number of foreign nationals who've lived in the country for at least 3 months or entered the country for the purpose of staying that long jumped by over 10% on year at more than 1.9 million people. Chinese and Vietnamese nationals accounted for over half of the total. Statistics Korea says that more foreigners coming to Korea after the pandemic and the expansion of the employment permit system are major factors behind the rise. It also said the number of multinational families, including households with naturalized Korean citizens or foreigners who got married to Korean citizens, saw an increase of more than 4% on year. And that's a jump of over 24% compared to 2018. At the same time, the agency's data shows continuous falls in the population of South Korean citizens living in the country since 2021. The number shrank to below the 50 million people mark for the first time in 4 years in 2022. But that fell by more than 100,000 last year. In detail, the working age population, or those aged 15 to 64, shrank by around 140,000 on year, while those aged 14 or under also decreased by over 240,000. Due to the country's aging society, the number of people aged 65 or older saw an increase of more than 460,000, making a total of nearly 10 million. That led the median age of the country to rise to 45.7, up 0.6 from the year before. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
The number of tourists visiting South Korea is recovering to levels before the COVID-19 pandemic. According to the Korea Tourism Organization on Monday, the number of those who visit Korea in June saw a year-on-year increase of nearly 50%, exceeding 1.4 million. This is the highest figure since COVID-19 was downgraded to endemic and has recovered up to 96% of the same month in 2019. By country, most of the tourists came from China, followed by Japan, the United States, and Taiwan. The total number of tourists from January to June this year has now reached 7.7 million. TMON and WeMakePrice, the e-commerce platforms of Singapore-based Q10, filed for court receivership on Monday. The two marketplaces have been failing to repay vendors operating on their platforms amid the liquidity crisis their owner, Q10, is going through. The Seoul Bankruptcy Court will review the company's applications and decide whether to accept the request within around a week. According to government estimates, the two owe vendors around 210 billion Korean won, with the figure expected to rise as additional transactions are nearing their settlement dates. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Justice imposed an overseas travel ban on the founder and CEO of Q10, Gu Young-bae, on the same day. At the National Assembly, ruling and opposition lawmakers continue to lock horns over broadcasting bills, with another filibuster currently in progress. Our political correspondent Shin Ha-young with the latest.
After a parliamentary vote brought an end to a ruling party-led filibuster, the National Assembly on Monday passed an opposition-led proposal calling for a revision to the Foundation for Broadcast Culture Act. The bill calls for an increase in the number of board members and an expansion of the government's authority to recommend members to media-related academic associations and viewer committees. It passed with 187 votes in favor amid a walkout by the ruling People Power Party. The vote followed a day-long debate initiated by the PPP on Sunday after the main opposition Democratic Party tabled the bill. Under the National Assembly Act, a filibuster in each bill can be halted after 24 hours if at least 3/5 of the parliament agree to do so. The DP has been pushing for contentious broadcasting bills aimed at reducing state influence over public broadcasters. Among them, two of the bills, a revision to the Act on the Establishment of the Korea Communications Commission and a revision to the Broadcasting Act, were passed by the opposition-controlled National Assembly on Friday and Sunday, respectively. The PPP opposes the bills, saying that they would increase the presence of progressive figures on the Public Broadcasters Board, while the DP argues that they are necessary to normalize broadcasting. Right after the vote on Monday, the DP tabled the last remaining revision bill, this time regarding the Korea Educational Broadcasting System Act, prompting the PPP to initiate another filibuster in protest. The final bill is also expected to pass the National Assembly on Tuesday. However, the PPP plans to advise President Yoon to exercise his veto power against the four bills. Three of the bills were passed last year by the opposition-controlled National Assembly, but were vetoed by the president. 신하영, Arirang News.
In other news, the first public robot facility has opened in the capital city, Seoul. Our Lee Soo-jin explains what it could mean for related research and testing.
We live in a day and age where humans are focused on building robots that can tackle labor shortages across different industries. And with the opening of this new research facility in Seoul's Gangnam-gu district, research institutions and companies alike will now be able to test and certify their robots as Seoul's first public robot research facility.
It has been difficult for AI startup employees to travel all the way to Changwon or Incheon to carry out tests, but now they can do that here in Gangnam. I believe that this will boost the competitiveness of the manufacturing sector as a whole.
Businesses that are the backbone of the manufacturing sector, such as metal and car part manufacturing companies, have been losing steam due to their heavy reliance on skilled artisans, as many have begun to retire with no new workers to replace them. To assist these businesses, artificial intelligence is being used to train Meister robots to learn the skills of these artisans. This machine, for example, that was used by a skilled artisan for decades, has been transformed into a Meister robot that can do what the artisan did all by itself, based on data that was collected for 2 years. Even though the artisan is now retired, his knowledge of how much pressure must be applied to the polished rod can still be used. And research on cobots is also being actively carried out. Cobots enhance productivity by taking on repetitive tasks of sorting out different pieces of equipment into certain shapes and colors, thereby freeing up humans to carry out more complex tasks. But because cobots work in the same space as people, they are required to have safety certifications that were previously unable to be obtained domestically.
The very first cobot certification system is now available. Before we had to pay a fee. That was usually quite large. To a foreign company to get certified, but we can now certify our cobots in Korea.
The district office expects this to further enhance research on cobots in the country. Continued support for robot development like this from the public sector will not only help smaller companies and manufacturing industries as a whole, but also help move Seoul closer to becoming a global hub for robotics. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
On the entertainment front, Kpop boys are dominating U.S. music charts and making new history as Stray Kids and BTS member Jimin's latest albums take up the top 2 slots on the Billboard 200. Moon Hye-ryun has more.
K-pop is breaking records on a US music chart, with boy group Stray Kids and BTS member Jimin's latest albums debuting atop the Billboard 200. Stray Kids' newest album, called 8, landed first place in the chart, which is the 5th time they've achieved such a feat. This makes them the first group ever to debut as number 1 with their first 5 charting albums, following Ordinary, Maxident, Rockstar and 5 Star. As of Sunday, according to Billboard's data provider Luminate, 8 topped the charts with 232,000 equivalent album units earned in the US in the week ending July 25th. This is also the biggest number of album units recorded for a K-pop album in a week this year. Of this figure, 218,000 units are album sales, which is the largest sales week for any K-pop album so far in 2024 and second only to Taylor Swift's The Tortured Poets Department. Earlier this month, the K-pop boy group also headlined one of the UK's biggest music festivals, the British Summertime Hyde Park Festival. The only other K-pop group to have surpassed more than 5 number ones on the Billboard 200 chart is K-pop sensation BTS, with one of its members also debuting at number 2 on the charts. Jimin's second solo album, Muse, earned the equivalent of 96,000 album units. This makes it the first time that the top 2 albums on the Billboard 200 are K-pop albums. Jimin is currently still serving his mandatory Korean military service obligations, but BTS members have been committed to releasing solo projects throughout their service. The Billboard 200 ranks the most popular albums of the week in the United States based on multi-metric consumptions as measured in equivalent album units. Units are made up of album sales, track equivalent albums, and streaming equivalent albums. 문혜련, Arirang News.
In Carnoustie, Scotland, on Sunday, the 2024 Senior Open Championship victory was claimed by South Korean golfer Choi Kyung-ju. His second career PGA Tour Championship title, but the win this weekend makes history as he becomes only the second Asian golfer to ever win a PGA Senior Major. Eun-jin reports.
54-year-old South Korean professional golfer Choi Kyung-ju, commonly known as KJ Choi, had a successful weekend in Carnoustie, Scotland, claiming a PGA senior title that comes with $447,800 in prize money. The 2024 Senior Open Championship, presented by Rolex, returned to Carnoustie from July 25th to the 28th. Choi led by 1 stroke entering the final round, then shot 4 under 32 on the back 9 to finish at 10 under 278 total, beating Australian Richard Green by 2 shots. But the 8-time PGA Tour winner had a rough start, hitting a bogey and dropping further shots at the 5th and 6th holes before gaining momentum with back-to-back birdies on the 9 and 10. The win marks Choi's second PGA Tour Champions win and the first since 2021. In 2007, Choi finished tied for 8th at the 2007 Open Championship at Carnoustie. As well as his 8 PGA Tour titles, the South Korean has won a European senior title and, with his win at Carnoustie, has become only the second Asian golfer to ever win a PGA Senior Major. The Senior Open Championship features male players aged 50 or over, one of the most sought-after titles in the senior game, and is the 3rd major of the Legends Tour season. For the weekend, Paul Broadhurst from England placed 3rd at 6 under, while Stephen Ames from Canada came in 4th at 3 under. Eun-jin, Arirang News.
With a heatwave warning in effect in many parts of the country today, some areas saw around 35 degrees Celsius. Currently, a heatwave warning is in place in most parts of the country. In fact, Seoul has been under a heatwave warning for 5 days. These tropical nights and the scorching heat are expected to continue this week when August begins. With many clouds across the country, rain is forecast in central regions. There are expected to be 30 millimeters of rain in the Seoul metropolitan area and more than 30 in the northern parts of Chungcheongbuk-do province. Tomorrow, most areas will start off at least 24 degrees. Highs will move up to 31 in Seoul and Chuncheon, Daegu and Gyeongju, 36 degrees. It will rain frequently in the Seoul metropolitan area and western parts of Gangwon-do province until the second half of the week. Please have an umbrella with you. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. That's all we have for today. Thank you for watching. Arirang News will be back at 9 a.m. Korea time.